Are you
Start
two ladies
video.
purposely having lights behind your head so you look like you have a halo?
Yeah, we're angels, Pete. We're angels, okay. Angels today. We're the good guys today.
I think I'll put me on mute.
Hi, Paul. Nice to see your face. I'm
Oh,
Teresa.
you too?
I'm Teresa, and this is Tiffany. So, hey there. I want to get started. I know others may join us. We've been putting this out and blasting this all week and even before because we're super excited to have this conversation. So I'm not going to wait for anybody. Now, Paul, I got to ask a question because I want to utilize the time that we have together. Are you okay if this is recorded?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, perfect. Then we are going to start recording. It's already recording. Yay! I'm excited. Okay. All right.
So we have 7 of the agents in here. Is that right?
Yes, and they may be having some technical difficulties as well. I was hoping to have more, but again, we're not going to wait because we want to cover as much as we possibly can, and we will make it available to the rest of the agents.
Share screen.
Perfect. Yay.
Still working out the kinks here, so it's going to have to be in this format because when I make it single slides, it pops to my other screen, which is where I have the meeting launch. So anyway.
All right. So if you're ready, Paul, everybody, this is Paul Bondi from PBI Solutions, and he's our insurance rep to Arch Insurance. So he knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing. We're coming up on renewal. So this is really good to have this at this time because we have to renew in April. So Paul, you can introduce yourself, take it away. And
all right.
You don't answer the questions that we have in your slides, then hopefully we'll have question and answer time at the end.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, usually this class is like a scared straight program for the agents to talk to them about what's really happening out there. So I'll just run through it like I normally do, even though it's a little smaller class here. But hopefully that we'll get some more questions this way too.
Okay.
So I have 1,000 clients that I write around the country, about 200 or so Keller Williams market centers. And on my program in 2019, we had 212 claims. In 2020, we had 414 claims. 2021, we had over 800 claims. So claims quadrupled since 2019.
Right.
So why is that happening? Why do you care? It's happening because you are selling a home in a day with 20 offers, no inspections, no contingencies, and somehow the agents think that they're not going to be responsible if something goes wrong in that transaction. And the way I think about it, and I did a class yesterday with a Keller out in Colorado, and this was a concept that was kind of difficult to get through. If you see a doctor pulls over on the side of the road because somebody needs help and that doctor administers CPR, that doctor can be sued for medical malpractice. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter that that wasn't that person's doctor, that person didn't sign a contract with them for them to perform the CPR on them. What matters is that they were a medical professional performing medical services and somebody alleged they made an error in the performance of those services. Real estate is identical. Mm-hmm. And people think, well, I didn't have a contract. I didn't represent them. It wasn't my job to do that. I didn't have to do that. The home inspector's job was to find that. And he missed it and didn't tell us about it. The homeowner didn't tell me that. It's the homeowner's responsibility to disclose that. Missed the point. you are held to a professional standard, and you are going to be brought into lawsuits based on that professional standard. And if I could get that into everybody's mind, I think people would be a lot more cautious in the way that they handle the business, and that is how we're going to prevent lawsuits. So that's one of the questions I think you might have put on your sheet too, is what's the best way to avoid claims? The best way to avoid claims, if you ask agents, is follow everything to the letter of the law. That is not how you prevent claims.
Okay.
That's the minimum of what you're supposed to do. The way you prevent claims is you assume you're going to be sued on everything that you do. And so you are overly careful, you over disclose, you go out of your way above and beyond what the law requires you to do. So I'll hop into exactly that concept with the top claims that I see. So the number one claim always is failure to advise previous water damage.
Mm.
And so what can you do? Well, you have the seller sign a seller property condition disclosure. Great. But what I say you do is not to simply give them the form, but to sit them down and say, do you know that the number one claim in real estate that you as a homeowner can be pulled into, and we as a broker or agent can be pulled into, is for failure to advise previous water damage? With that, if you ever had blowers in your house, did you ever have a 5-year sideways rain that flooded your attic? Did you ever have to replace your floorboards? Did your dishwasher ever leak? Did your toilets in the upstairs floor ever leak and start pouring out in light fixtures in the kitchen? You want to ask them these questions, jog their memory. You are never going to be sued for over disclosing, ever, ever, ever. You will always be sued for not disclosing. So if you can help them remember the things, know what needs to be disclosed. When I sold my house in Maryland, my agent asked me if I ever had damage, and I said, yeah, the door that goes to my patio was leaking, and I had it repaired. It doesn't leak anymore. And she said, oh, well, we don't have to report that then because you repaired it. And I said, no, I'd like to report it. I don't want to not disclose anything.
Mm-hmm.
So previous repairs, ask them about everything, because that's why you're going to be brought into this lawsuit, and you're not protected because the seller doesn't tell you something.
Right.
I know people, 90% of the claims that I get are absolute garbage. There is no reason why a realtor should be brought into the claim. If the home inspector comes in and misses something, why should you be responsible?
Mm-hmm.
But you are, because you're a real estate professional and they're going to name you. And even if you win, it's incredibly expensive to defend. So you don't want the lawsuit. Not that you want to be able to win all your lawsuits. You don't want the lawsuit. It'll take years off your life in stress and aggravation. So that's my prime example of what you should do to go above and beyond to make sure that that lawsuit never happens. Second most common issue is failure to advise whether the home is on sewer or septic. Accounted for 11% of all claims last year. It's 100% preventable. I don't know why it keeps coming up. It is your obligation to verify, corroborate whether the home is on city sewer or on septic.
Okay.
So if you don't have a current procedure in place in the market center to do that, I'd say talk to the PB and the principals about how we get that in place to make sure that's being corroborated.
Mm-hmm.
HOA assessments and permits has been coming up a lot, where people are listing a property as a 3-bedroom. They didn't get proper permits. It really should have been listed as a 2-bedroom. Somebody did renovations in the basement, renovations in the kitchen, did some upgrades, but they didn't get proper permitting for it. New homeowner moves in and finds out that those permits were never done and sues.
Mm-hmm.
That is your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Bodily injury property damage claims was 10% of all claims last year. That's you're showing a house and somebody falls down the stairs, somebody gets bitten by a dog, you're doing drone photography and the drone falls down and hits a neighbor's car. You sell a house and 3 doors down somebody's breeding pit bulls and you didn't advise the owner and it bites their kid. There's mold in the home, somebody gets sick, lead, radon, asbestos. Tree root intrusion and pipes in the backyard, anything that deals with your failure in the performance of real estate services and not disclosing something that led to an injury or property damage, that is an extremely common issue. I'm going to hop around for one sec. Estate sales are also extremely common right now. The issue with estate sales, there's really a few different issues. One of the issues is you're dealing with death as never a unstressful situation, dealing with money in death, and you're dealing with a family who's selling a property who didn't live in the property most of the time. So you have major disclosure issues when the person selling it doesn't know everything about the property,
Right.
but it is theirs. So that is causing a lot of issues. And so one of my claims I had, actually I have two now that dealt with this particular issue, where the family came in after the sale was agreed and closed saying, we didn't all agree to this. You just asked the son, but there's 3 siblings here, and we didn't all say okay, and we don't want to sell my mom's house. Somebody wants to live in it, or that house, you didn't get enough money for that. I'm not okay selling it for that amount. And the agent didn't get the okay from all members of the family before that deal closed. I don't know what the rules and regs are in Carolina about selling an estate and what authority you have to get sign off from within the family, whether it's just the executor or the whole family. But I thought it was interesting, and so I wanted to bring it up.
Okay.
2 other issues that are coming up more and more are solar panels in the house, which I confess I know nothing about, but I know that I'm seeing more claims about it. And what I'm seeing is that solar panels are incredibly expensive. And a claim for one of my market centers up in Jersey was a woman sold her house. She was was trying to sell her house. She was going to bring her solar panels with her. She wanted them to come, and then she found out that there was like a couple of $100,000 to move the solar panels to her new home. She couldn't afford it, and so she then had to put the lease of the solar panels back into the sale price of her home, and it was expensive. It added like 40 grand or something to the sale price. The buyer now could not qualify for the loan. The deal fell apart, and he sued the market center. So whenever you see solar panels in the home, you need to ask questions. Is this going to convey? What is the amount of the lease? How long is the lease for? What are the other costs associated with ownership of the solar panels? And again, I'm not an expert, but I would recommend talk to the market center executives about what you should know and questions you should ask when there are solar panels involved. Wire fraud, give me one sec. I want to up your market center's policy real quick. I don't have a cyber policy in place for you guys. So wire fraud is not covered by real estate E&O. I want to tell you what it is and what you can do to avoid it. So wire fraud is one of the agents clicks on a spoof email or somebody hacks into your system. The bad guy gets information about a closing. They contact your client posing as you, telling the client to wire funds. Is incredibly common, and that's what cyber liability is for. I recommend you guys consider it if you don't have a policy separately in place.
We do, Paul, we do.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, good. So what I cover in the E&O policy is the gap, and the gap is that you were not the breached party. Somebody at the title company gets breached. The person from the title company whose account got breached, or the bad guy who got that information, calls your agent saying, hey, would you please forward the wiring instructions to your client for me? And you guys do it. And you don't call to authenticate that request before you forward the wiring instructions. And so you get sued for negligence on a wire fraud, even though you didn't get breached. It wasn't your email that got hacked. It was a title company or some other third party. That's what I include in this policy. The way to avoid it is not to put in the signature on the bottom of every email that you send. And I see some emails that are like 10 pages long with disclaimers on the bottom, and they're not going to read that. What you should do, in my opinion, is when you meet somebody, you say, I'm never going to ask you to wire money. By the way, my name is Paul, and I'd love to be a realtor. That's how I would introduce. Or send them a text that they go, why are you sending me this text? It just says, I'm never going to ask you to wire money. Nothing else. And they say, why are you telling me that? They're going to remember that text because they're going to say, why did you just send me this text? But education to the third party, to your client. This is not about you guys making a mistake. This is about your client. So my mom, who's 84, called me last year and said, I have a friend, Paul, who sent me an email that they're in Africa and they need money. I'm like, Mom, you can't possibly be telling me this. That's the oldest, most common scam in the book.
Yeah.
There are people that aren't good with technology, who are very trusting, who believe this stuff. Clients could fall into that same bucket. And these criminals are getting incredibly good with their emails. I mean, really good. Somebody bought my website, pbigroupsolutions.com, with 2 L's in solutions. They went out and paid money to buy the website. And they emailed my business partner saying it was me, telling them, hey, we owe this vendor $65,000, pay this bill. Now, my business partner and I have been best friends since we were 4 years old. He knows better, and we didn't fall for it. But they used my signature, my logo. They got a previous email and then put it as if it was a string. I mean, they really are good. So be really careful and remind your clients often you're never going to ask them to send money.
Right.
Okay, so these are the top things that will get you sued. In other words, these are not the things that are the most frequent claims. They are the things that if you do are most likely to get you sued. So whereas the standard chance of a claim frequency is 1 in 1,000, just a little bit below 1,000 transactions results in a lawsuit, doing these things are more like 1 in 20, 1 in 30 chance of being sued. And the number one is always selling to or for an attorney. So if your client is an attorney, be on notice. Let the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Be prepared. When they ask you questions, know that they're asking those questions because they're trying to entrap you into an answer that's going to get them a lawsuit. And I'm sorry to say that that's the truth. It's not always the truth, of course, but it's true enough that you should be thinking about that when you're selling to or for an attorney.
Gotcha.
Agent-owned transactions, especially when you're flipping properties, extremely litigious. It's great business. It's something that a lot of agents do. It's an entrepreneurial thing that just comes with being a realtor. But if you're flipping a home and renovating a kitchen and selling it, you're going to have a very high likelihood that somebody's going to sue and say, you knew that roof needed to be replaced, but if you replaced it, you weren't going to make any money on that flip, so you didn't do it. You knew that AC unit was old and had to go, but if you did that, you'd have lost money on that flip, so you didn't do it.
Right.
What do you mean you didn't know there were copper pipes? You renovated the whole kitchen. All the walls were down. They were down to studs. You mean to tell me you didn't know there were copper pipes in there or that the wiring needed to be updated or replaced? You took down the walls. How do you not know this stuff? It causes tons of lawsuits. In fact, one of the largest claims I had in Jersey Market Center, an agent sold a flip property to her maid of honor from her wedding. And her maid of honor then sued her, and it was $600,000 or so lawsuit. It was 100 pages long of things that she didn't fix in the house. And it was alleged, she knew about all these things that were wrong. She did the renovations on the house, and she just cut corners because she wanted to make a profit. It reminds me of my days watching this guy, Armando Montalongo. I don't know if you ever watched him on HGTV. He's down in Texas, and he flips houses. And he always does it as cheap as possible.
Right.
Everything's cheap because he's just trying to make money. I mean, that's
Right.
the conflict of interest here. Is you're, as a flipper, you're trying to buy it as cheap as you can, put in as little as you possibly can to make it look as good as it possibly can, and then sell it for as much as it possibly can be sold for. Those are anti the interests of the client. And then you say, well, I'm not representing the client.
Right.
And then I go back to my example at the very start of the doctor who stops on the side of the road. It
Exactly.
doesn't matter that you weren't representing that client. And that's the conflict. And that's why the lawsuits happen. And the same holds true for dual agency. It is way too easy. I'm seeing way too many claims where somebody says, you wanted your agent who sits across the hall from you to get the other side of that deal. You
Mhm.
didn't tell me to put an escalation clause in my offer.
Mhm.
You knew there was a higher offer out there, and you didn't tell me there was a higher offer and that should up mine. You told them to put an escalation clause in their contract, but you didn't tell me to do that.
Right.
You wanted to turn it around, make quick money, make your 6 points commission or whatever it was. That's what I'm seeing.
Gotcha.
My business partner in Jersey used the Keller Market Center, and there was dual agent, and the buyer's agent came in and did an inspection on the property without his consent.
Mhm.
The other agent in the office, the selling agent, said, yeah, it's okay to do that. And my business partner, Eric, said, nobody ever asked me to do that. Now, we obviously are not going to sue our own clients, and I don't advocate suing anybody. I'm against it. I do every day. But it's very common. And giving out loans, this circles back to the agent owned, to the flipping and agents investing in properties.
Mhm.
You should never do this. You should never give out loans to your client. Don't do wholesaling. It is extremely litigious. It's not covered under E&O, anything to do with giving a loan to your client. So if you were to go to the client and say, yeah, I could sell your house for you. I could come in and do a rehab of that kitchen and your master bath. And if we do that, I'll bet we get another 150 grand out of that house. I'll split the proceeds with you when it sells. We don't want to do that.
Mhm. 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 Don't get licensed.
Okay. Now let's run through a couple of specific examples of things that I'm seeing in claims that came in. One is that there are people, it's hard to believe it exists, there are people whose jobs are to entrap you into a fair housing violation. That's what they do all day long. They call real estate companies and they say, I qualify for low income housing. Can I rent this? Can I buy this? I have 6 kids, little kids I want to bring in the house. Can I rent this? I have an assistant's pet. It's an iguana. Can I bring it? And they want you to say no,
Mhm.
knowing that if you do, they immediately have a lawyer who does this as a course of business, and they will send you a paperwork for a lawsuit for a fair housing violation. So I think one of the things you asked me was, does it have protection in the policy against discrimination? Yes, fair housing discrimination complaints and discrimination complaints are covered by your policy up to the full policy limit. So you have $2 million worth of coverage for discrimination. I just don't want you to get sued for it. So
Right.
this is how you avoid it, is when somebody makes that call, you think, is this one of those people that's trying to entrap me? I'm not really sure if I know the answer. I'm going to go ask somebody.
Okay.
I'm not going to guess.
Okay.
One of my Myrtle Beach clients has sold a home in a community for an investor who wanted to buy an investment property in a golf area and use it for short-term rentals. 1 month prior to the sale, the HOA passed a bylaw to disallow short-term rentals. That was not disclosed to the buyer, who then bought a property for the explicit use of renting it, and now they couldn't do exactly what he bought it for. And so he sued and obviously won. There's no
Right.
chance we're going to win that one.
Mhm.
You have to be aware of any changes or updates to the bylaws prior to the close, including any special assessments that come in. They raised the rates. It's not really going to happen down there, but some of my clients in the north have heavy snowfalls, and so there's special assessments to pay for the removal of all the snow. You might need to repair tennis courts or some other one-time large costs that the HOA puts assessments on. So you want to make sure that you know all those things and convey them to the new buyer. Down in Louisiana, one of my agents sold her best friend's home. She knew her for 40 years. felt she knew everything about the property. And when the buyer asked, was there ever any flood damage? She said no, but she was wrong. And they sued. And the moral of that story is simply that disclosures, even if you feel supremely confident that you know everything there is to know about the property, the disclosure should be provided by the seller and not by you.
Right.
Just a quick list of the things that you shouldn't do. And if you do, you should talk to the executives, the PB, MCA principals about how to do this carefully. But business brokering, so selling businesses, wholesaling, if you flip and you're doing renovation, be really careful. Make sure it runs through people to get everybody sign off that you're doing everything by the book and they, and you know the risks. And then team LLCs, you should not be using the LLC on your business cards, emails, websites. So you can say you're the Paul Bondi team, but you don't want to say you're the Paul Bondi team LLC.
Gotcha.
The LLCs that you guys form do not do real estate services. They are simply designed to collect commissions for tax purposes. They don't do real estate. So we don't want to list them as an additional entity to be brought into a lawsuit. The policy is going to cover the agents, and it's going to cover the team, and it's going to vicariously cover the team LLC. In other words, if the team LLC does happen to get named for something that you do on behalf of Keller Williams, we will cover that, but we don't want to add another entity. You may wind up having to get separate legal counsel to defend the team LLC. It gets more expensive. Don't do it.
So Paul, if I may, thank you for that. I'm glad you have this bullet in here, the team LLC's bullet. So let me ask a question. Someone may say, okay, my team formed a corporation. So is it the same thing, or is there a difference, or do we just not advertise the actual extension of what the business is?
So if it's an LLC or a corporation, I say do not list it.
Okay.
And because the only reason, the reason I talk about this is because there are states that allow agents to do things outside of the real estate company under which they hang their brokerage. So for example, in Colorado, you can manage your own rentals outside of your brokerage.
Okay.
So I could have an agent at a Keller Williams in Colorado who has 50 properties that they manage. And they formed an LLC, and the LLC gets added to the policy. And then that person is doing a whole bunch of stuff that the owner of the market center has no idea, no management of, and is doing things that they wouldn't agree to cover. But all of a sudden a claim comes in that's now covered by the market center. And so the OP just got hit with a $200,000 lawsuit for something they have no oversight of, and they don't want it. So I don't want an LLC formed who might do something else. Maybe they do BPOs on the side, appraising, auctioneering, mortgage brokering, business brokering, or anything else under that LLC. We don't want that hitting the market center.
Gotcha.
So I don't want any assumption that the LLCs or corporations that the agents form for their teams to somehow be covered for anything that that company does. It does not cover that company. It only covers the agents acting on behalf of Keller Williams.
Makes sense.
That makes sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you for that.
Sure. All right, I'm almost wrapped up, and then I'll take all your questions. Another issue that I'm seeing more is, and this happened in, I think, the Asheville Market Center. An agent put up a picture on a listing, and they weren't supposed to use that picture. It was like moved to Asheville on our website and used a picture of the Asheville County Fair. And it was a professional photo that was copyrighted, and they got sued. Be careful about using pictures. I just remind agents, you can't just go on the internet and pick a picture and use it. You can't use pictures that if a previous agent was trying to sell the home and they couldn't, so they changed over to Keller, and you can't use that previous agent's pictures without their consent. Be careful with those photos. But that is covered under the policy. So you do have deductible waivers. There's a $5,000 waiver on the policy if you do four things. I just want to remind you about those four things. A home warranty was purchased or waived. An inspection was performed or waived. You used a state, local board approved, or attorney drafted sales contract, and a seller property condition disclosure unless it was not required by state law. Those are the four requirements to qualify for a $5,000 deductible waiver.
Okay, good.
And so,
If you don't mind, can you go through that list one more time?
yep, a home warranty purchased or waived,
Okay.
inspection performed or waived, use the state, local board approved, or attorney drafted sales contract, and a seller property condition disclosure.
Okay.
And then the next question I usually get is, well, what if we're on the other side of the deal? What if we're not representing the buyer? We can't get those things. And the answer is, you do your best. I would recommend that the Market Center add a document to the contracts for when you're on the other side to say, do you want a home warranty? Do you want an inspection? And they can say, we're not touching this document. They have every right to say, no, we're not signing this. They don't have to agree to it. So there may be circumstances where you don't qualify because you can't prove that these things were done. Most of the time during discovery, it will come out whether there was a warranty or not. So you'll be able to find out then, but you don't have control of that when you're not on the right side of the deal. So that's just,
Okay.
you can't be, if the insurance company can't be protected by having these things in place, then you don't get the benefit of the waiver for them.
Right. Okay.
Okay, and then last thing is, what should you be reporting? So, actual lawsuits, threats of lawsuits, demand letters, disciplinary proceedings or complaints brought through the real estate commission or another regulatory body, or something that you reasonably should know is going to result in a lawsuit.
Right.
So if somebody calls you up and says, that house you sold me has mold, I'm on the way to the hospital, my kid's sick, you need to call me, you're getting sued. If they say, hey, that house was on septic, it's not on city sewer, like you said, you're getting sued, call me. If you get a letter from a buyer who says, you told me those chandeliers were going to convey with the home, those are $10,000 chandeliers. What are you going to do about this?
Right.
You better call me. Getting sued. What you don't want to do is one of my Kellers in Virginia had that same issue with the chandeliers, and the agent said, well, I'll just pay it out of my commissions and then report it under the E&O. Can't do that. Can't have a claim, settle it, and then call the E&O carrier with their hand out and say, give me the money I just paid. You can't do that.
Gotcha.
E&O carrier has to agree to the settlement. I also had a claim where there was a $1,500 roof repair, and the agency decided it's not big enough to report to E&O. I'm just going to handle it myself. So they brought in a friend of a friend contractor who repaired the roof, did a shoddy job, the roof leaked, sparked a fire, the house burned down.
Oh, no.
Now the $1,500 claim that they didn't report was a $450,000 replacement of a home lawsuit that got denied because the original claim was never reported.
Never reported. Wow.
So in your email to me, you said, why are claims denied? 99% of all claim denials are because they knew about it, the client knew about it. The client means anybody at your company, the agent, a team assistant on the team, the principal of the company, anybody there. Somebody knew about it and never told the carrier.
Gotcha.
And maybe it's because the agent thinks, well, I can work this out. And they think they do. And then 6 months later, a claim blows up. They thought it had gone. Nobody mentioned it again. You know, my advice is talk to your principal broker, talk to the executives there, call me, discuss whether it's something that should be reported under the E&O. Don't decide that for yourselves. put it on
Right.
my shoulders. I carry insurance for PBI Group, so that if I make a mistake in what to do, you still have coverage. I don't want the mistake where you don't have coverage. But many times, every year since I've been in business, the owner or OP of a company calls me and says, I got this lawsuit. I didn't know about it. It was from a year ago, and I'm just finding out today.
Mhm.
And I have to say, it doesn't matter that you found out about it today. What matters is if anybody in your company knew about it.
Right. And when you
So
say,
whenever I see those,
so when you say everybody, Paul, that's any agent, any staff, any assistant, anyone associated with our
a
office.
part-time worker at the front desk answering phones,
Jeez.
that happened up in North Jersey. 18-year-old temp worker got served with papers a year later, and then I can see on the papers, the OP sent it to me. It says that she was 18-year-old temporary worker at front desk with green eyes and brown hair. That's like how they documented that they served it to her. But anyway, the OP called me and said, "You're not going to believe this, but we got served a year ago. That temp worker never gave it to anybody. She left for the day, got buried. We never heard anything about it
Right.
until a year later. They sent it to me again,
Oh my gosh.
and I said that claim's denied."
Sorry.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. This is very good. Very good. Mhm.
So that's what I got. That's my scared straight.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you so much for that, Paul. This was really good information, and we've taken lots of notes based on what you've covered here. And so I know we have a few questions that we
Please.
want to ask as well, and then we'll hopefully have some time to where the agents here that are on can ask a few questions. So we'll quickly go through ours, Tiffany.
Okay,
All right.
fire away.
I'm trying to only cover things that you haven't specifically talked about here. On average, what does the average claim actually cost? Either the agent or the firm or all together? Do you have any kind of average? Okay.
So I don't have anything super current. The last thing I read was about 5 years ago. NAR did a 10-year study, and the average lawsuit was $30,000. That's in total. That's legal fees and damages.
Okay. Okay. And this was from NAR?
NAR put out a study, yeah.
Okay.
And I'd say that's probably in the ballpark of right. It's
Mhm.
maybe up a little bit from that.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you for that.
Yeah, the ones I talked about though, the water damage and the sewer septic,
Mhm.
those are much more expensive types of claims than the other ones. Septic especially, because when you have a sewer septic issue, now you got to dig a line to the street to connect it to city sewer.
Right.
That's expensive. That's not cheap stuff. Or if you
Gotcha.
have to dig out a septic tank out of the backyard, maybe somebody had 2 septic tanks and you didn't identify it, that can be really, really expensive stuff.
Okay. All right. One other question that we had on our list here. Have you noticed a certain type of claim that you've seen the Real Estate Commission, North Carolina Real Estate Commission, actually take or impose disciplinary action on as well?
Now, I have to say, so when the claims come into me for disciplinary proceedings, I really never see them again. I see
Mhm.
the complaint, I turn it into the carrier attorney calls your company, whoever you designate, and then I never hear anything about it unless it turns into a lawsuit,
Mhm.
and then they bring me into it. So I really don't know if agents' license are being suspended. I know that the principal broker can be responsible because I've had PBs call me and say, we need to be really careful about this because I could get my license suspended because of the actions of this agent. But I really don't know how these things turned out, unfortunately.
Okay.
Okay.
So Paul, with that, do you believe that maybe we should get a follow-up with maybe the actual Arch insurance rep or someone at the firms that we use on a regular basis? Would they have that information?
I mean, after you report a claim, that you should follow. Yeah, you should be tracking them like hawks. I don't trust attorneys. I don't have anything specifically against anybody on the call who's an attorney, but you got to watch to make sure they're not overbilling and that they're handling the case properly. So yeah, I'd be all over it.
Mhm,
I wouldn't let it. I get a lot of calls from people who, when I go to renew their policies, their premiums go up because they had these big losses. And
Right.
they say, "What are you talking about? I didn't have a big loss." Well, yeah, you did. $75,000. What? Where did
Right.
that come from? Nobody's ever even called me. How did they possibly rack up that much money? So yeah, I think keeping in touch with them, good idea.
All right. Very
Mhm.
good. Thank you.
Yeah, that was all.
That was it?
Yeah,
Okay.
he answered all the rest of it.
Answered all the other questions.
Mhm.
Okay, very good. Very good. All right. We have a few more minutes left here. I know we have several agents on. If you're not scared straight or shaking in your boots from what you heard, ask away. I know you got to have some questions based on what we heard. Pete, I know you have a question. I know you do. All right.
You mentioned no loans for fix up.
Yeah.
Are you aware that Keller Williams has a ready to sell program that lends people money to get their house fixed up before they're going to sell it and then deduct it from the total proceeds on sale? And it's a part of the Keller Offers client iBuyer program.
I am not, and I'm not a fan of that entire concept. And there is no coverage under the policy for issues regarding the financing of that. And one of the things that came up for me was somebody did that. The seller did not agree on the price, and the house was sitting. And the person that lent them the money said, "I need to collect my money. I can't have it sitting out there forever. We need to sell this home." And the seller is saying, "Well, that's too little. You're just trying to give it away now because you want to get your money back. But I could wait and make a lot more money." And the person who did the loan foreclosed on the property. And then the seller sued, basically saying, "You extorted me.
Mhm,
Mhm.
mhm.
I don't want any part of that.
Yeah.
I think
So
it's way
you-
too risky."
Yeah, so you're not a fan of the whole iBuyer type, or the Keller.
I think it's incredibly risky, and
Yeah.
we don't know right now. Maybe in this current market condition, maybe it's not so risky because home prices are going through the roof and things are selling immediately. But what happens if you set up that deal and things crash,
Mhm.
and now you can't sell that house, and now that investment that you put in doesn't get you back the money you want?
Right.
Mhm.
I don't know. I just see problems all over. I see 10 miles down the road a million things that could go wrong.
Okay. Okay. The second question is, we have a team LLC, and I guess what I'm hearing is the only people I can tell about it are my grandchildren.
Just there's no reason to have it on your website or to put it on your business cards. I'm not telling you to keep it super secret. I'm just saying don't market that you are this LLC
Okay.
because you're not using that LLC for real estate. You're using it to collect commission.
Mhm. I got you. I got you. So it could say the ABC team with no reference to ABC LLC.
That's right. There's no
Gotcha.
reason for the public to have any knowledge that you have an LLC. It doesn't help you. It only hurts. It is only one more entity that somebody's going to name in a lawsuit. And then you run into a very real possibility that you don't just need one attorney to represent you. You now need two attorneys, one for Keller Williams, one for the LLC. It doesn't add anything.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Good questions, Pete. Good questions. Good questions. Anybody else?
It's Ethiel. Just curious about the $5,000 waiver. If you meet the four, is there a time when, like, what's the purpose of a $5,000 waiver?
Was the purpose to incentivize you folks to do things in a transaction that are going to reduce the incidence of claims?
Mhm.
The
Okay.
home warranty, the inspection, those greatly reduce your chance of getting sued. So that's why we do them. And then your deductible on your policy is 10,000. So this is a waiver of half of that if these conditions are met. So it just provides incentives to do things to mitigate risk.
Does that mean that our, I guess this is a question for our BICs. Does that mean our E&O policy has gone from a $2,500 deductible to a $10,000 deductible?
That is correct. We are now at 10,000. And as Paul mentioned before, when we go to renew, they're looking at all of those previous years or current years claims and how much has been paid out and what we, actually had to get them due. So yeah, we did have that issue. That very situation happened at renewal last year.
Okay.
Yeah, I find that the agents are a little bit removed from the liability that the market center takes on. I had one market center that went from 35,000 E&O premium to 178,000 this year because of claims. And while the agents are going, oh, I don't want to pay another $10 a year for into my E&O, the market center has substantial liability. Plenty of times agents will leave and then they can't collect the deductible from them if a claim comes in, or the E&O premiums go up because of big claims. There's a lot of liability that the market centers or any real estate brokerage takes on that I feel like the agents kind of are a little disconnected to. You guys, as agents, see your risk as the deductible on the policy. The brokerage sees the risk as what could happen to us for the next 5 years of premiums if a claim comes in. Could we be denied coverage and then have to go to a carrier that has substandard coverage because nobody else will write us?
Right.
Or can I not collect from an agent? Those are real risks to the market center.
Mhm. Yeah, good point, Paul. Very good. Very good.
All right, well, we only have 5 more minutes. So if any of you have any other questions for Paul, now is the time.
Hey, Tila. So I guess that I just have a small thing with the real estate commission now. I guess that advertising, it's not covered at all.
So, Hilla, you and I can discuss that offline, but yes, so for ours, and Paul, you can speak to this if you like on our coverage. I know we have an exclusion for false advertising and misrepresentation in advertising. So talk to us about that, Paul. Why is there an exclusion for
Thank
those
you.
those items?
Yeah, so it gets a little bit stickier than that. It's really pretty nuanced, and it depends on what you're being sued for. So if you put up a listing and it says the house is 3,000 square feet, but it's really 2,800 square feet, that's not false advertising.
Mhm.
That's an error in the performance of real estate services that you misrepresented, not intentionally, the square footage of a home.
Mhm.
So if there's a false advertising claim, you would really, you'd be hard pressed to come up with something that wouldn't be covered under the E&O.
Mhm.
I don't know what it would be. I mean, you'd have to deliberately go out and say, this is a home built by this prestigious builder, and you knew that it wasn't,
Mhm.
but you just did it because you wanted to sell it. That was a claim that actually came in where
Really?
somebody did that. But yeah, it wasn't. Nobody did it deliberately. It was a difference between the nuanced difference between designed by and built by,
Mhm.
and they advertised it as designed by this prestigious builder, not built by this prestigious builder.
Okay.
Sort of like you guys do powered by Keller Williams now,
Mhm.
where you can have an office, a real estate company that's not an actual franchise, but
Yep.
piggybacks on the name of Keller Williams. So
Yep.
it's sort of like that some builders do, especially the prestigious ones. And the lawsuit came in surrounding that because the buyer said, well, I thought this was a whoever home, but it really wasn't a home by that builder. And they sued. Now it's in court trying to parse through built by or designed by. But anyway, what's the specifics in this issue that was a false advertising claim?
False advertising versus what? What was the evidence?
Misrepresentation
Misrepresentation.
in
Okay.
advertising.
So is there exclusion for misrepresentation?
Yeah, is that your question?
Yeah.
Is there, okay, so the question would then be, is there an exclusion for misrepresentation in advertising? So,
There is. I mean,
yeah, the
there is,
difference,
but
go
it would
ahead.
have to be deliberate. It would have
Okay.
to be intentional. If you're just doing your job and you make a mistake, that's not excluded. And you have $100,000 worth of coverage with no deductible for what we call disciplinary proceedings, which are complaints through the real estate commission or some other regulatory body. So if something comes in where somebody alleges that
Mhm,
you made a mistake, you
mhm,
should call me for sure,
mhm,
or
mhm.
call your PC,
Right.
your PB, and talk about it. But I don't know what the specifics are in this one. I'm happy we can go through it if you want. I could tell you if that's the kind of thing that would be covered.
Yeah. That would be something great for you and I to talk about offline, Paul.
Okay.
So that's something I can shoot you an email on and we can discuss. So thank you for answering that. We have a minute.
I got one last question.
All right. Of
If-
course.
If I ask for permission to do something and the BIC gives me permission and it's wrong,
Of course, Pete's gonna ask.
Of course he would.
Uh-oh.
Is he frozen? Or are we frozen?
Are we frozen? Oh no.
You guys aren't frozen.
Oh,
Oh,
okay. Okay.
I think Pete's camera conked out.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
So to follow Pete's line of thinking there, if he's told incorrectly by his BIC,
Mhm.
what does that, how does that flow through from an E&O standpoint?
It doesn't make any difference from an E&O standpoint. I mean, I may look at, it depends how egregious the error is.
Mhm.
You know, you may look at a company whose BIC is giving improper advice if it's a really egregious error and say there's some problems at this company. But as far as the coverage goes, it doesn't impact the coverage.
Okay.
Very
There'd
good.
be no exclusion in the policy to say, oh, because your BIC said to do this, you're not covered.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Very good.
All right.
Very good. Paul, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this. It seems like you've been doing this quite a bit here lately.
Yeah.
A whole presentation in class and everything. So we appreciate this, and you never know, we may do this again after we renew, so we can talk about exactly the coverage we have, because I do believe agents do need to know what coverage is included. So we may have to do it again. Yep.
I'm happy to do it. And I hope, I hope it wasn't too negative or pessimistic.
No, not
It's
at all.
hard for me because I get, 5 claims a day,
Mhm.
and most of them are garbage, and it sort of gets you a little bit, hardened to the reality of what's going on out there. But
Right.
it's incredibly litigious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
absolutely. And
Everybody's
the things that,
First response, sue.
Right.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
and we need to be aware of that and protect ourselves. So thank you so much for sharing with our agents how they can do that in this litigious market.
Yep.
Thanks
All
again.
right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We are glad that Paul Bundy is here to tell us what we needed to know about E&O. So we will make this available on YouTube. So tell your other peer agents that they need to go out there and take a look at it.
All right.
All right, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Have a
Nice
great
to meet
day.
everybody.
We're
Thanks,
so glad
Paul.
you asked.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate
Bye-bye.
you.
Hi.
Teresa,
Yes.
you're going to love this.
Uh-oh.
The minute the minute after I asked the question, my internet went blank, and I didn't hear a thing.
Exactly.
And I went absolutely away, and I've just come back on again.
Pete, I think you talked about this halo over our heads. I think the powers that be were looking out for us.
I think they probably were. What was the answer that he gave?
Yeah, he answered. He
You
just
did.
said that the BIC advice does not impact the coverage. And so
Exactly.
if the BIC did give improper advice, that won't exclude the claim from coverage.
Exactly. Coverage remains the same.
Yeah, I'm still on. I'm not, my video's
Oh,
not
there
on,
you are.
but
Okay.
did you have a specific example, or were you just kind of asking in general?
I was just asking in general because I like my Bics.
So Pete's looking out for us, is what he's saying.
Something
In
like
reality, the only thing that could ever be a coverage problem is if the principals of the company gave you advice that was to commit a crime and you did, that wouldn't be covered.
Gotcha.
Right.
That makes perfect sense. Doing
that. Oh,
something
believe me, that ain't gonna happen.
that ain't gonna happen.
Not
Ain't gonna
at all.
happen here. Oh no. All right. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks, Pete.
Thanks.
All
Bye,
right.
everyone.
Oh, there you are. Hi, Beth.
Bye, Beth.
Thanks, everybody.